This is Scott Conway with mothersraisingsons.com, and I'm talking about my proprietary 4P 360 leadership system. Now, this is for generally high level leadership. It's very expensive to learn, and it's focused on like high level government leadership, organizational leadership, of course, corporate leadership, and that's kind of the focus there, but it has a clear application to parenting because parenting is essentially leadership. And we talked about what the four pillars are. The four pillars are that leadership in the 4P system must be powerful. That means it has to work. It must be practical. There has to be a use for it where you can actually use it and it's not going to cause negative consequences and there'll be opportunity to use it. It has to be principled. That means it works. It works for reasons. And if you understand those reasons, you can tweak it and adapt it to specific situations. And it must be positive. That means it builds relationship, it builds respect, it builds kindness rather than tear these things apart. It's focused on what you do want rather than what you don't want, where you are going rather than what you're trying to get away from, and that's the focus. The 360-degree leadership, we already talked about leading down, traditional leadership, leading across, leading your peers, and leading up. Now, in a 360-degree leadership, there's a couple of other aspects of this and a pretty clear parenting application. And I call it diagonal leadership. So leading diagonally, what that is now you're leading someone that is under somebody else's authority. You're leading in someone else's domain, but you're leading their followers. So as a parent, for instance, if I'm visiting at a class, how do I lead the other kids in the class when the teacher is actually the one who has the authority? Just like in a company, how do I help lead the people in somebody else's division where I'm not their manager, I'm not their supervisor, I'm not the executive in charge of that division, but there's influence that I can still have over there. And so that's diagonal leadership. Now, when you're leading diagonally, of course, if you come in powerful so that you can still have that impact, you come in practical. So that way, what you do, it gets the job done. There's an actual application for it. There's no unintended consequences. And then part of here in the practical of the unintended consequences, you're not the one in charge. So you have to not damage that relationship, even support that relationship, help that relationship, so you powerfully create the change that you're after in a practical way that preserves the line of authority of the other person. So you're not undermining them or tearing that apart, because it's not practical to do that in an organization where you tear down an existing leader in order to get what you want done someplace where you don't have the authority and the responsibility to get things done. And so you're helping this leader in a practical way. And then it must be principled. So, of course, it works for a reason. You can adjust, you can adapt, you can tweak. And it must be positive. So it builds relationship. Now, when you're leading diagonally, you're also leading across. That part has to be positive. So it supports your cross relationship with the other leader. It supports your connection diagonally. It's focused on what you do want them to do, not what you don't want them to do, what even their leader would like to see happen. And so this diagonal leadership is part of the 360. Then diagonal up leadership. Now you're not leading the person who has direct line authority over you, but learning how to lead someone who has direct line authority over your peers. And so it's like, how do you lead the boss of your peer? And so say, for instance, if you're in your upper management or middle management, but someone else is your peer and you're leading the head of their division and you're influencing the head of their division, and how do you do that effectively? And of course, you can imagine you apply the four pillars there too. It's the same thing. You be powerful so that what you do really works, it really has an impact, it really produces the result. It's practical, so it's not going to be damaging this relationship, it's not going to be damaging the relationship between your boss and this other person who's your boss's peer. And you're building the connection in a way that is also principled, so it can be adjusted, it can be adapted based upon the dynamics of the horizontal and the horizontal and the vertical relationships over there. And that it is positive. So again, it's focused on what you do want, not what you don't want. It builds the respect, it builds the connection, it helps encourage and support. And so 360-degree leadership, true 360 degrees, isn't just down and up and sideways. It's down, it's diagonal down, it's sideways, it's diagonal up, and it's up. And so the way I teach 360-degree leadership, it really is 360 degrees. And the exact same principles that I teach to corporations can also be taken home. And of course, obviously, can be applied to parenting. But it can also be applied to relationships. So part of leading across, assuming that you're partners with your spouse or partners with who you're living your life with, sharing your life with, whether it's a roommate or a romantic interest or, of course, a spouse, that there should be this level of partnership where that's leadership across. And even if one chooses to submit, you're both adults and you're making decisions and choices about things, and so ultimately it is still a leading across. That no one's the boss of you, no one can stop you from leaving, and so there has to be that sort of knowledge worker level of deference and respect and honor, and of course in the case of romantic relationship, love, of course, as well. And so that's the 360 degrees. But I still have this thing called a double O feature that I've talked about. And the double O feature, it's a 0 point. And what are these 0 points? So there's 0, 1 and 0, 2. So we're going to talk about the double O features, O1 and O2, in the next lessons. And so we're getting to the 0 points of the 360 degree leadership, because we have multiple directions. We have down, we have across, we have up. We have diagonal down, we have diagonal up, and so we've got all of these directions going on, but we also have those middle points, and there's 2 separate 0 points that we're going to talk about. That's part of my proprietary 4P 360 leadership system. This is Scott Conway, PhD, JD, whole crazy resume with mothersraisingsons.com, and sharing my proprietary system. See you in the next lesson.